I'm seeing PXG associated with both hype and gimmick. So do you think our readers are skeptical?
I think they're watching more of Bob Parson commercials.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back. This is episode number 77 of No Putts Given. I've got Harry, Chris, Tony, and Adam here with me today. And Adam, since you're stopping by, why don't you do the honors?
Let's get it.
It's so deep and like to the core.
That would have been perfect for last week with our ball dropping episode. That would have been awesome.
The shuttlecock.
It's not as good for Harry's Nodwell's Daily Dingers where he says, dingers!
Yeah.
Nope.
I can't really get that tone, but...
Oh, yeah.
Dingers. Yeah.
Well, you know, everybody has their thing, so it works. It works for dingers and no putts given. But how are we this week, guys?
I'm great. I'm learning so much from Daily Dingers. I mean, I'll be honest, it's pretty cool. I love it. I think it's great.
You did come in here yesterday and you was like, I can't stop goat humping.
My kids are all saying dingers all the time and singing the Spy Shag Me song. And
It's very catchy.
Yeah, it is.
catchy. If the golfer behind the videos was any good, it'd be really good. But
Yeah, that would be like really helpful. But no, sucks to suck sometimes.
Did you tell everybody you just won your first? Was that your first W in a professional tournament?
Second.
Second.
Yeah, I played the other week and ended up winning. So that was a good first tournament of the year, and got some tournaments coming up, G Pro and Swing Thought Tour. So hopefully I can get that form into those tournaments.
I'm just looking for the back of your truck to be filled with those Happy Gilmore checks.
Yeah, that would be funny.
Harry, when you go into that tournament, are you thinking, hey, this is a tournament I'd like to win? Or like, hey...
Well, you know, I would like to be like, I could win, but if I'm taking home a profit, it's an extra income for me, baby.
His side hustle is being a pro golfer. That's pretty cool.
I know.
Tony's side hustle is now going to be Cameo for anybody that wants to call him.
Yes.
And be shamed for the ball you play. He will call you on Cameo for $19.99.
Oh my God.
Please make that happen.
I'm trying to be less militant about people's golf ball choices, but
Bullshit. You would love to do that, Tony. Let's face it.
I'm trying.
You said premium ionomer is a category that should not exist. So
Yeah, I mean, that's a bullshit word.
this is what I'm saying.
Phrase. Bullshit.
That's what, hey, somebody would have paid $20 to be shamed for that.
Yep.
Have you ever gone into those
Exactly.
restaurants called like, you know,
Yep.
yeah.
Ed
you get
DeBevick.
it.
Ed DeBevick's.
Yep. What are we talking about today?
Tony, I was actually going to come to you. We are breaking down the driver test by swing speed, and on Monday, so today, the high swing speeds were released and published. So I was hoping, Harry, Tony, which one of you guys wants to take this and break it down?
All right, so we have most wanted driver testing, which tests everything and gives you the overall winners with all the swing speeds combined, right? This is the best for high swing speeds, and how we define that is 105 mile an hour and above. So if you're one of those guys out there or women out there hitting dingers, this top 5 is for you, right?
Yeah, so our top 5, this is really where our most wanted overall winner, the Callaway Epic Max LS, kind of really stood out. So that was the finished on top again. Second, the Tour Edge EXS Pro, which has just been, you kind of go through the results. It's just one of those ones that's kind of sneaky. Maybe, again, Tour Edge doesn't get the credit it deserves with the EXS line. Probably doesn't get the beating it deserves for the hot lunch line. But so
They make the best and worst drivers in golf.
I mean, it's on balance. Good to see EXS there because that is a value proposition. Rad Speed, Cobra number 3. That was another one. Again, we kind of saw pop up under a lot of different metrics in the overall test. The driver that refuses to go away, the Ping G410 LST, 4th overall.
It's historically good. That is a historically good driver.
And then number 5 overall, the Titleist TSI2. Again, I would say huge improvements, certainly over the last 2 generations from Titleist, going from short, spinny drivers to now, drivers that appear to be sort of in the upper echelon of what we test.
Tony, it's impressive how you keep the same tone throughout all of those.
That was a very monotone delivery.
And I'm like, you're from England, technically.
Number one, Callaway.
Callaway Epic Max LS won the 2021 Most Wanted Driver Test, and it also won overall for high swing speeds. It was first in strokes gained, first in forgiveness for the high swing speeds, and first in strokes gained and first in distance for overall. So a dominant driver and nearly double the next closest competitor in strokes gained for high swing speeds. So if you are in the high swing speed category, this top 5 that Tony read off in that fashion should be probably in your demo set.
Yeah, I mean, for sure, that Epic, it's just, it's long, right? Number one for distance for high swing speed players, but also just proved really straight in our test, and that to not only hit fairways, but hit it a long way in the fairway. I mean, I want that.
Yeah, the 2 takeaways for me are is Epic Max LS wins overall, wins for high swing speed, but the 410 LST, which is the first year we've actually included previous year winners in our driver tests, actually, people always want to know is new or better. And in this case, last year's driver from Ping actually hung with the new drivers and outperformed in our test their new model, which is pretty unique.
And I wanted to go back to the top 5 overall. Tony, number 5 was the Titleist TSI-2, correct?
Yeah.
And that's an unusual sighting in the top 5 driver. Titleist traditionally doesn't outperform the other top 5 OEMs and drivers. But Harry, you're in the top, the high swing speed category. Didn't you just make a switch to the Titleist driver?
I did. I went for the Titleist TSI-3.
Okay.
But it's different. So the drivers that we're suggesting, that came out on top in the top 5, is just a great starting point for you to go look at what to test. And for me, the TSI-3 was just incredible across all metrics, forgiveness, distance, and accuracy. So it was just stupid for me not to go along with that.
So Tony, here's a question though. If, we have the testing every year, right? And
That is true.
it is what it is. But you talk about the gaps between, first and second, third and fourth. And so it's like sometimes, okay, you go out on a course and let's say, you're watching the PGA Tour players and somebody shoots a 65, but the field average that day was a 74. So that 65 was maybe a lot better than somebody else that shot a 61 or 62 relative to the field. So from kind of that perspective, how much better was the LS in general as compared to second, third, fourth? Because it seems like that the Callaway outperformed everything else by a significant amount.
Yeah, for this group, it was a pretty significant margin. Certainly as you break it down, as you start adding parameters, right, which is what we do in True Golf Fit, where we also consider attack angle and tempo. The more you can narrow down your parameters, the sort of the better recommendation we can give. And typically, as those parameters get narrower and narrower, those gaps start to emerge. And so I don't think it's necessarily atypical to see wider gaps when we do the swing speed breakdown. But this was a pretty big gap, as Adam mentioned. Doesn't mean it's the best for everybody, but certainly we're like, all right, that one worked.
To give you some perspective distance-wise, Chris, on that, you have 18,000 shots, right, for an overall test. When you throw all that in together, you generally have between first and fifth place, maybe 4 or 5 yards distance difference, When you look at that same top 5 in high swing speed to low swing speed, sometimes you can get upward of 15 yards difference, So the gap starts to get bigger and bigger as you start to drill down closer and closer to the specificity of an individual golfer's swing characteristics, right?
Sure. I think that's important too, because some people look through whether it's the total driver test or, even the swing speed breakdown and go, the difference between first and last and this and that was, 1/10 of one shot over, so I'm not going to spend $500 on something that's going to save me one shot over 32 rounds or something like that. But the reality is, like I said, the more specific you get to the characteristics of your individual swings, the difference between the driver that's best for you and a driver that's maybe middle of the road and a driver that's absolutely terrible for you can easily be 10, 15, 20 yards.
The difference between worst and first in the high swing speed category generally is around 20 yards. That's
huge.
The best example I can give as a person was Harry. I mean, the guy swings 120 plus miles an hour. He came in working at MyGolfSpy, hitting the ball 280 yards. He now hits it, 315 on average, pretty much.
Mhm.
That's just getting a driver that got narrower down to his individual specificity, right?
In this test too, Harry, such a unique case.
I mean, Tony, you talk about the TSI. You know a little bit more about it.
It's one of these things, right? Usually when we look at an individual tester, because we have that ability, so Philip will call me and go, "Hey, what do you think for this guy?" Or can you show me, what do I need to do to see the best for this individual tester, and show him how different clubs rank. So as I'm compiling the data, Harry calls me up and go, "Hey, what do you think's the best driver for me?" And so I looked at our core metrics, and for number one, or for our strokes gain overall, it was the TSI 3. And then number one for distance for Harry was also the TSI 3. Then I looked at the forgiveness metric, and number one for Harry was the TSI 3. And again, this is all for Harry, but it's a unique case because usually there is a bit of like, are you willing to forego a little bit of forgiveness to get more distance, or are you willing to sacrifice the opposite way?
There's some trade-off. Everybody has some trade-off,
right? And so usually it's like, all right, it's number one here, but it's number 6 here and number 4 over here. Yeah. And so to see kind of a straight line across the table like that is the ultimate no-brainer. And that's actually atypical to some degree, but
the best way to look at it is most wanted is the top of the pyramid, right? Swing speed is the middle of the pyramid, and true golf fit is the bottom of the pyramid, right? Or inverse, however you want to shape it.
Yeah, that's a good way to look at it, actually.
I will be going on True Golf Fit later today and posting my results then.
Oh,
there you go.
Very cool.
We'll see what it comes up with. What does True Golf Fit cost anyway these days? It's not much.
It's $9.
$9. That's like what is that? That's not even
less than a Jersey Mike's sandwich. I can tell you that.
I can tell you that is one half of a large Jersey Mike's roast beef and provolone sandwich for me.
Well, you get the giant. That's not.
You pay $16 for a large sandwich?
A giant.
It's 4 individual mini sandwiches.
But $16?
$16.99.
If you have a jaw that unhinges like a python, you can eat that sandwich.
Well, anyway, we're going to link the article for high swing speeds results to this video, so you can go and take a look and see where you might fit in. And as always, you can check out True Golf Fit to get an even better idea. But I want to move on. Tony and Adam, we did another one-word survey this year, and I think this is very interesting. We almost ask our audience to play a word association game with us, and we throw out words like engineering, innovation, performance, leader, and see what company our audience most associates with those words. And Adam, before we get into the results, I wanted to go to you and ask, why even do a survey like this?
Why not?
I mean, we do a lot of surveys on MyGolfSpy, just to survey what's going on in the industry, what's going on with our readers, things like that. But if I have to look at any and go, which is my favorite, the one-word survey probably is it, because as a golf insider, this gets to the root of what's going on in the industry the fastest, because people have to associate a word with a company. They can't think, it's not wishy-washy, it's black or white to some degree, right? So the other thing that's really cool about it, I think, is the year-over-year aspect of it, so that you can see the changes on how consumers feel about companies on a year-to-year basis. The third interesting point is these are things that Tony and I talk about probably 2 years ahead of when the data actually starts to show what we are talking about behind the scenes, which is just another cool thing. And this year, not only is it my favorite survey, but this was my favorite year to see the data that came from it, because I think it's, in my opinion, the most compelling one we've ever done.
What result did you find most compelling?
The basically polarization between TaylorMade and Callaway.
Okay.
And when you look at those two companies and where they both were, where they've come and where they are now, kind of over the last probably 5 to 8 years, TaylorMade was the king. They lost that crown.
They lost the 5-year war.
Yep.
Callaway comes in, takes a lot of the same people from that TaylorMade ship, right? Brings it over, uses a similar playbook, rises really quickly. TaylorMade gets bought out by a private equity group, which most people would have thought would not have seen what results we just found in the survey. And Callaway, for lots of different reasons, I think, is in a much different position. So we saw TaylorMade this year skyrocket in positive words and Callaway plummet in negative words.
Why do you think that?
The one thing I say, and I'm probably going to write a larger article on this, but fundamentally, there is an ebb and flow between those two brands, almost without exception. If one is up, the other is down. So when TaylorMade was the number one driver in golf, Callaway was number two, and then Callaway went up, and so TaylorMade had to go down, and now TaylorMade has the number one driver again, and Callaway is down, and so there's always this going on with those two brands anyway. And I think Adam touched on it. So TaylorMade is a much different company than it was 4 years ago, 3 years ago. Is you sort of have, right, there's a progression. Hey, there was a big change for TaylorMade. Adidas sold to a private equity firm, and then it takes time for the effects of those changes to be realized, to materialize, to sort of invent itself as at least a different company in how it approaches business. If you want to call it taking your licks, taking a beating, having a stutter step at least, TaylorMade went through that a few years ago. I think we're seeing a little bit of the same thing with Callaway now, where it's a much quieter thing because there's not that public announcement of, hey, we just sold our company to somebody else. And certainly sort of forward facing, you see some really encouraging things like the acquisition of Topgolf, a lot of really kind of cool things happening for the Callaway brand. But behind the scenes, it's a very, very different company than it was certainly 2 years ago, even a year ago. So the big thing I point to, right, Harry Arnett, who came over from TaylorMade, it was certainly the driving force behind the reinvention from a marketing perspective. He'll never take the solo credit for it, but it was the team that he put together with the pirate ship marketing, as he called it, and that kind of thing that really drove that train. So Harry's gone. Most of his team is gone. Chad Coleman, right, drove their social media. Social media at Callaway, way different than it was. I jokingly called it, Callaway was like your buddy, the golf company, right? It's like super accessible on social media, felt like real people, felt like you were connecting with these people and by extension, connecting with the brand. That is all gone. Most of those guys are gone. It's a fundamentally different approach. Internally, there's this shift happening. The word that I've heard over and over and over again is that Callaway decided it wanted to be a more authentic golf brand. And so you're seeing a lot of changes to try and reach that end goal, whatever that means, right? And you're seeing a lot of TaylorMade type marketing.
That's interesting that if Callaway wants to be a more authentic golf brand, why then would they be down 36% in positive words?
It's a transition thing. So it's different, right? So even if you're not consciously aware of it, our readers are part of that sort of hyper online engagement community. So they're seeing the social media piece of it and kind of the digital stuff, not necessarily the TV commercials and what you see in the stores. And so even if they're not consciously aware that something is different, I think there are leading indicators. And so all of these things or some of the things that really drew people to Callaway, made Callaway cool, have changed. And Callaway probably believes it's evolving for the better, but it is in this period of transition. And I think that's what I would attribute most of it to.
I can give you 3 stats, Miranda, if you want to know why,
Yeah.
The number one is dishonest, okay? They were plus 108% in dishonesty, okay? That's going to bring your negative words down pretty quickly. Yeah. The second one was deceptive. They were up 66% in deceptiveness from the One Word Survey. And then the next one was leader. So they were looked at down 48% when people considered who is the leader in golf. Those 3 things move the needle significantly.
So that makes me wonder then, Tony, everything you were mentioning makes sense, but it feels a little inside baseball to me for readers to be thinking about a transitionary period, and that's why we're going to vote this way. It might be implicit, but Adam, what you're saying to me seems a more obvious way that our readers might associate Callaway. And I would think that there's probably a very obvious link as well. I don't know if there's still the fallout from Find It, Cut It.
I think some of it is perceptual, like Tony was saying, and you got a vibe, you get a feel from the social every day over a couple of years, and that changes your opinion. I think you also get an opinion from our reader, which took the surveys, from the ball issue that they had and how they handled that, or, the fact that there's just a lot of things that go into it. So you can't possibly say, here's exactly why. But when you look at the 3 metrics that bring that number up the quickest and the hardest and the fastest, Those seem to be the three that pop to me.
Well, and to me, the two things that pop for me too is one, it'd be really interesting, and like you said, Tony, you may write a longer article on this, and I think it'd be, for people that are interested in how these mega companies, right? Because we're talking about, really the two titans of the industry. Of the top five, you say, every year, what, 60% of the driver market is either Callaway plus TaylorMade, right? So they have more.
It's probably a little less than that now, but
so more than half at least. I mean,
it's about, I would guess, and it's typically, and there have been exceptions over the years, but that's your 1 and 2.
Yeah. If that's the case, like, it'd be interesting to kind of go behind the curtains a little bit as much as you can and talk about, how these companies are organized and how they're trying to execute the different things that they are. Because one point you mentioned, you said, okay, wanting on one hand to be a more authentic golf company, right, was the phrase that you used. And then on the other hand, what you've seen in the last couple, 2-3 years is Callaway try to acquire a lot of businesses to effectively equipment proof its model. So on one hand, we want to be more authentically golf. And on the other hand, we want to position ourselves monetarily so that we don't have to be. Right. And so it's like hedging, that's where you get the Jack Wolfskin and the OGO. And
yeah, I don't think that has to do. I don't think anybody saw that they bought Top Golf and thought that's going to affect my one word survey, though.
That's what I'm wondering. Yeah.
I mean, I think that's totally separate. I think that is equipment proofing your company, which is smart because it's tough to make a living selling equipment in this business.
Well, not this week, but
well, you get what I mean. Over the 20 years being doing this, it's not in the last 10 specifically. A dollar is a dollar. We always say it, whether you're selling a Nike limited edition shoe or a set of irons, they equal the same thing. And sometimes you got to diversify your bonds, as Wu-Tang likes to say.
Wu-Tang Financial. I'm not saying it's not an intelligent way to go about it financially at all. But to me, it's like you have a pizza company and say, hey, we're going to become more authentically pizza by making sure if we can't sell pizza, we're still okay.
I think you can do both, but that's
I'm not saying you can't. It's just an interesting, like, if we go behind and say, okay, how is TaylorMade doing this transition? KPS Partners bought it out. You had this private equity thing. Now, right, again, it's rumored. It's, on the market for sale. We'll see where that happens. Whoever ends up buying that could have that will have a huge impact on TaylorMade in the next 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 years. And then you have obviously Ping, Titleist, Cobra, Puma, rounding out the top 5. They each have their really own, different and unique blueprint.
One interesting stat from this was, I just wrote it down, was innovation. Cobra jumped up 56%.
Was just looking at that one.
Which was kind of an outlier, and that's cool to see because I think they have deserved that for a long time and maybe we'll see how next year goes in the same poll, but I think they've long deserved that.
How many people is this based on? Just out of curiosity. How many people voted and did the survey?
We had approximately 10,000, I think, take the
survey.
It
was over, I think it was closer to 11,000 this time around. So it was a pretty big number. Yeah. The Cobra one is super interesting to me, and I agree with you. I think pound for pound, they are the most innovative brand in golf right now to a degree because they have to be, right? They're sort of like that. They're an interesting tweener brand, right? They're not like one of these big brands like Callaway and TaylorMade and Titleist, and they're not a smaller brand on the scale of, say, a Srixon or a Bridgestone or a Wilson. I mean, they are, solidly kind of in that middle space. And so you can't really decrease your business successfully. And so you want to constantly challenge those leaders. And you do that through some really cool things and not being afraid to try some radical stuff, if you will.
Did we capture the age? Because that would be an interesting one to look at, is the average age,
by
demographic wise, to see if the younger demographic and that 56% up went up for Cobra is correlated.
I think it was in there. I mean, we didn't report it, but we have it.
I can tell you one thing that wasn't in that demographic, and that is women readers on MyGolfSpy. Zippo.
Oh, we need to get that up.
Oh.
Trying.
It's more than Zippo, but it's not 4.
It's as close to Zippo as you can get.
Another interesting trend, I don't know if it's that surprising, but I'm seeing PXG associated with both hype and gimmick. So do you think our readers are skeptical?
I think they're
PXG?
watching more of Bob Parsons commercials. You know?
It's polarizing.
I mean, damn, can you get more bold and brash and polarizing than a Bob Parson PXG commercial?
Selected least often for humble.
Look, they're unapologetic about charging $2,000 for stuff and $50 for a candle.
Well, here's my quote right here. If you don't make any noise, how will you ever be heard? You know, that's Bob right there.
Yeah, I mean, that's not surprising. I think going back to the one that strikes me, and this is, and again, I think it's only part of the story when we talk about the dip in Callaway for, we saw it for things like, I think they dipped in innovation and ranked probably, in my opinion, much more highly than they probably should have for follower. But I think all of it speaks to the fact that while they are doing some cool stuff with the AI technology and things like that, fundamentally going back, I mean, Epic was like 5 years ago, right? The first Epic, 4 or 5 years ago, and the Epic Speed Max LS, the stuff that is on shelves right now fundamentally doesn't look much different than what was there with the original Epic. The story, the AI piece is certainly evolving, but fundamentally not wildly different. You look at the lineup, the Iron lineup, the Apex stuff looks almost identical to the Apex stuff that was on shelves 6 years ago.
What and why do you think that happened? They went with the Maverick, and then they went back to Epic. So
and on one hand, there's something to be gained through familiarity, continuity, and the idea like, this is familiar to me, Epic, I know what that is. Best example, right? The Pro V1 has been the Pro V1 since the Pro V1 launched.
So do you think it's a good thing or a bad thing? Which one are you trying to say?
I think there's a lifespan to a driver, to a product lineup, where if you don't give it a cosmetic overhaul, if you don't give the appearance of new technology, right? So that sliding weight track system, it's really good. It works, but it looks the same. The driver looks the same. And so
what I hear you saying is maybe the reasoning for some of these numbers could be because they rode that horse just a little bit too long.
It's certainly within this product cycle, like the feeling, I would call it like Epic fatigue, right? Like, okay, we've seen this, we know what this is. And I think probably a lot of golfers associating it with what they saw 3-4 years ago.
But if the average person only buys a driver every 3.9 years, is that the life cycle?
Yeah, well, that's like, I'm looking for a new driver and what's on the shelf looks exactly like what was there when I bought my last new driver.
We're seeing the same thing happen. I mean, with the Odyssey putters, the OG one this year, it's exact look like.
That's nostalgia, right?
That's not the same thing. That's a rehash of 20 years ago, right?
Right, but I'm saying it's looking the same.
If there was no Epic for 5-10 years and then they came back with an Epic like they did with Big Bertha,
that's what I'm saying. So do you think they took it too long, too far?
Maybe, but it's been sort of Epic not Epic, Epic not Epic.
Well, I go back to when TaylorMade rose to the top, right? And granted, this also is what made them fall incredibly quickly. But that life cycle that they had built, no matter who you were as a golfer, Tony could walk into the store today. I could walk in 3 months later. Chris could walk in 4 months later. Miranda could walk in 6. No matter when we walked into the store, TaylorMade was going to have the newest product on the shelf because of the life cycles that they built, right? So how does that translate to the golfer? Why does that matter? Because the people in the stores get most excited about the new shit that hits the shelves, right? So when you walk in, they know the most about that. It's top of mind for them. They're talking about it the most. It's the newest commercials you're seeing. So it's always topical for them to be chatting about with the newest person that comes in. And that worked. That always fresh thing stayed fresh until it rotted. But maybe, Epic and with the pandemic and all this other stuff, maybe riding it out isn't the worst thing. I mean, Callaway seems to be doing pretty well in sales, right?
And that's a key point here, right? You're kind of given this opinion survey that looks bad, but at the end of the day, Callaway is still doing really, really well.
So was TaylorMade until TaylorMade wasn't.
Right, and that's all right. Everybody does well until they don't. And certainly, I think, TaylorMade, I believe, finished number 1 in the driver category last year. Data is really, we're just into the season now. TaylorMade finished on top for the first month of meaningful data, and some of that's going to be impacted by supply chain issues and who actually has product on the shelves. But I think, like I said, sim is the hot shit right now. Like you walk in, that driver gets your attention, just like it got your attention last year. And I think, by next year, if next year is a sim 3, then you start to go, hey, wait a minute, are you putting yourself in that fatigue situation again?
I got you.
It's a fine line.
I think it's like movie sequels, right? At some point in time, there's too many of them to differentiate.
Man, don't tell my son that about Star Wars, man.
Well, that's what I'm saying, though. But
there were some Star Wars movies that were pretty bad in the middle there.
Jar Jar Banks.
He was my favorite, dude. What are you talking about?
And so I think people see Callaway as an epic franchise. And I'm not saying that's a bad thing. They see it as, okay, this is that epic franchise. And there's a story, it's AI, it's speed frame. Jailbreak, right? But if that's working, why would you change it? If your sales are where you want to be and things are going and you're winning most wanted tests and the products are performing, why change it?
That's a really excellent point, and I don't necessarily disagree. So if you look at the brands that I would say flatline, but in a good way, right? We don't see a lot of this from Titleist, and we don't see a lot of this from Ping, and
right.
that's true both in our survey and how those brands fit in the market. They tend to be relatively level, some years up a little, but mostly you see steady growth, and they do that through continuity between their lines. And so this is where I talk about the idea of Callaway evolving as a brand from the Harry Arnett sort of everything is super exciting, pirate ship mentality.
You're talking about epic fatigue. That is epic fatigue. Like that was fatiguing epically.
But yeah, and so if you are going to say, hey, we are this tour authentic golf brand, right? We're going to be rooted, have our roots with the best players in the world. And that's part of why they brought on John Rahm and trying to bolster that tour staff, which has traditionally not been on par with TaylorMade.
But we're talking about two different things. We're talking about performance and perception, right?
But no, hear me out. So if you're going to say, hey, this is who we are, this is who we want to be, we're going to be this level tour brand like a Titleist, like TaylorMade has kind of almost become, then it kind of makes sense to ride out these product lines and provide that continuity. But there is an adjustment curve, I think, with the consumer to get to the point where you think of Callaway in the same way you think of those other, tour brands.
Well, at the end of the day, I think a lot of this, it's going to come down to if you're a loyalist of that company or not. Like if you're a loyalist, you're going to be buying that brand no matter what driver comes out. If you like the Epic.
Yeah, but Harry, there's performance, like I said, and perception, right? Performance is how it performs in most wanted, how it performs in stores.
Callaway's it performs.
Perception is the one word surveys. And at some point, when those one word surveys tip the scales to where it becomes negative and negative, whether you are a follower or a brand wash person of that brand or not, TaylorMade had that same ride up too. And then people were like, dude, get the TaylorMade shit out of my bag. I don't even want to be associated with it anymore, right? So at some point, the perception hits the scale of 51% of people having more negativity than positivity, and then it just...
There's a tipping point.
Even when TaylorMade tipped, they were still one of the top brands on the market. So you don't go from...
Well, it takes a while for millions of people to trickle down all that, disseminate that information and the buying patterns of those people that used to play that, replacing it with a new brand.
And they were a top brand until they were sold for $200 million in cash.
Yeah, I'm just saying it's the difference between first and third and not first and 20th.
Yeah, but to those brands, they're both about being one thing, and that's
if you're not first, you're last.
Exactly.
Can't have two number ones.
If Callaway are trying to get a brand that's going down the way of Titleist to try and get that loyalist brand, and it's not more personal.
It's interesting because the word authentic really is so unauthentic in my mind. It's bullshit, right? When they say, I want to become an authentic company, those companies that call themselves authentic generally are companies that are less engaging on social, less open to the public, less authentic, right? But it looks authentic from we look very khaki and white polo, and we look very, authentic and tour, but really it's kind of BS in my opinion.
Well, if you're trying to be authentic, you're not authentic.
You know that there had to be a meeting at Callaway where a bunch of people got in a room and sat down and said, all right,
here we
how
go.
do we be more authentic?
Right.
That is the definition of not being authentic.
Right.
Well, that's contrived, right? It's contrived authenticity. It's like how do you force people to be something? I mean, it's like, we go back to, we won't mention the names, but another media company, right? Where it's like, all right, Tony, you're going to learn how to tweet today. And I want you to tweet 3 to 5 times today to be authentic on social media. And it's just so forced and mechanical and robotic that, anybody that sits there for more than a minute or two goes, that's not real. That's not actually authentic.
Yeah, that's Instagram. That's how, hey, we have a perfect life on Instagram, but actually you're shit burning in the background.
What is that documentary, Harry?
Fake Famous.
Fake Famous, yeah.
Oof.
This is kind of how Nike went wrong, is when they came in and was like, you know what, we're going to be an authentic golf company. And so we're going to put a country club crest on our equipment and all of this wacky shit. Whereas if you're like, why don't you just be Nike? You have a brand, be Nike. People love Nike because it's Nike. And so to do something entirely different strikes me as odd. And now you have a situation where you had really hardcore, loyal Callaway fans. And some of those guys still exist for sure. Like we certainly see them. But that was all part of that engagement piece. And you're, to a degree, risking trading that loyalty for the idea of being kind of this more authentic.
That big thing, right? That $1 billion thing that you're talking about that they built came down to really 2 people. I mean, that's really what it came down to, of
Correct.
What was and what is. And those 2 things are no longer 2, but 1.
Callaway's not in trouble, but it's definitely kind of interesting to see kind of that, to use Callaway's own phrase, right? The Mongolian reversal between the 2 brands this time around. You can say Callaway is doing things differently, and that's certainly part of it, but TaylorMade is doing things differently too, and a lot of that is extremely positive, and that's coming through as well. So it's not just that TaylorMade just kind of flatlined and Callaway dipped underneath them. The fact of the matter is TaylorMade is doing a lot of things right that are resonating.
Yeah, let's give some credit to TaylorMade real quick. Performance up 55, Leader up 68, Integrity up 88, Deceptive down 54, and Dishonest down 56. I mean, that's every metric you want to see, and it's big numbers, some of the biggest.
Do you think that's to do with marketing?
I would almost argue lack of marketing.
That's exactly, Tony, you're exactly right.
It's the absence of screwing up.
So that's the interesting thing. TaylorMade is actually becoming more of that.
More trusted.
Well, authentic, right? Of like not pushing it in your face, not, doing what they were doing. And it's working for them because people are seeing that change over a period of time to where they're like, oh, I kind of like this new TaylorMade.
The other thing that TaylorMade doesn't have, right? Like if you're just looking at a resume, if someone's looking there and say, okay, in the last 3, 4, 5 years, has TaylorMade made any huge mistakes, like egregious missteps? No, not really.
No, I mean, I think they've improved their iron looks. Their drivers have, looked the part now.
Balls have tested pretty good, right?
Yeah.
Good golf ball. And they're committed to the golf ball, which they weren't before.
That is true. At first, Tony and I would talk about behind the scenes. They're becoming much more transactional and direct to consumer behind the scenes too, which at first looked like, whoa, but now you go, it's probably a pretty smart decision,
Right. Right.
They're just becoming more transactional as a company versus waiting for everybody else to sell their product. They're becoming very proactive about it.
So lots of intriguing things to take a look at in the One Word Survey. We're also going to link that here so you can go and check it out for yourself and send us some comments. Let us know what you think about the results. But guys, I thought it would be fun to have a survey of our own. I couldn't really make it fit into the 1 word, so I went 2 words. But I'm going to give you 3 options. Your response can either be worth it, not worth it, or you're indifferent. I was scrolling Twitter this past week and it resurfaced on my Twitter that Bubba Watson is using iron covers. So I thought I'd bring it to the panel and just get a general consensus about what we think about it. So let's see. Chris, why don't we start with you? Worth it, not worth it, or indifferent?
Worth it, 100%. If you have investments, you do what's reasonable to protect your investments, right? Especially if you're using a soft forged iron. And that bag chatter, when you're walking around here, clank, 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 it can grate on you. And if you want to use the clubs and you want to keep them looking like that, that's really the only way to do it. And there's some very stylish options.
Chris, I would look out for death threats on Twitter.
But why, Adam? Though, hold on. I have never understood the hate around it. Why wouldn't you?
I mean, do you wear socks? You wear socks on your feet?
I've never understood it. All right, Adam, to you. Worth it, not worth it, or indifferent? You don't care.
I'm going to pull a Tony on. I'm going to give you 2.
Oh,
I'm going to say...
fine, rewrite
no,
the rules.
I'm
You're the
just
boss.
I'm going to say indifferent, but I think it's ridiculous. Like, people go crazy, I think, just because it's like peer pressure to say that they hate iron head covers, because really, golfers carry some of the stupidest shit, craziest shit on their bag, towels, ball markers that are this big for MyGolfSpy, and, just the oddest, craziest stuff. The iron head cover is actually one of the most functional things that
it makes sense to me.
It does make sense, but the thing that I could see, I wouldn't use them personally just because of the fact that I would hate to pull them on and off like a driver head cover so many times in a round. I would lose all of them by the third time I played.
But think about this. Do you have a driver head cover?
Yeah, and I take it off the first hole and I throw it into the bag.
See, most people, but like people that have it, like a lot of people, they don't do that, right? They
Harry
head
recovers
cover
his
on
every
and
time.
off, on and off. I mean, how many times do you take on and off your glove every round or a driver
Oh, look,
head cover?
I get it, man.
Compare that to a 7-iron.
I'm not shaming people for having iron head covers.
Thank you.
Game them things. I'm just saying I'm personally indifferent, and I don't see why people shame people because it's not a big deal. People have so much different bling on their bags and their driver head covers from Swag that are like fluorescent with hair flowing off of them, but you won't put a...
Pins and aces. Yeah, got the hair flowing doing that.
But you won't put an iron head cover, so I don't get it.
All right, Harry. Worth it, not worth it, or indifferent? Iron head covers.
If my set of irons cost $5,000, I would put iron head covers on them. If
So
not,
PXGs you would iron cover.
So
PXGs, I could potentially do it.
Titleist concept.
Potentially, but if it's not, no, I'm not going to put it. Here's the thing: if it's a good looking iron, it didn't cost me an arm and leg. I want to show those bad boys off and just be like, if I'm playing match play, shine in my opponent's
I
face.
don't know. I'm gonna put your feet to the fire here. You've got to pick one of the 3. Worth it, not worth it, indifferent.
Indifferent.
Lame.
Sucks. Tony, what do you think? Worth it, not worth it, indifferent? I'm trying to read the look on your face and
Come on, Tony.
figure out what you're gonna say, but I can't.
Let's see if we can bet on what Tony's going to say.
Your look is indifferent. I cannot figure out whether you're mad I'm asking the question.
So I'm gonna ask, like, what kind of chode uses iron covers? Honestly,
I love that word.
Like, if you're gonna put iron covers on your clubs, you should also have to wear like a baseball jersey that says "toolbox" on the back.
Hey, that's
of
a
it.
shirt
Like,
right there. What kind of chode wears iron head covers?
But I will say, if you're asking and you didn't, but I'm going to pretend you did, which I find to be the greater aggravation, which would grate on me more, assuming I'm playing with somebody who's got iron head covers, if it's not impacting pace of play, all the just put this back in, whatever bullshit, I'm just going to roll my eyes quietly. But man, the more egregious offense to me would be like a low quality 2-piece low compression golf ball. That would be like...
So let me hold on.
Like-
Let me pose you this one: playing with the person
the bigger
who
offense?
has,
Premium ionomer golf ball or
Wait a
iron
second.
head covers? Which one?
Tony, did you or did you not have a set of Mioras that you called the best irons money could buy? Did you or did you not ever put iron head covers on those fancy ferrules?
Yeah, so I definitely put fancy ferrules on them because that's awesome. But the only argument I will ever make for...
Did he
You
answer the
didn't
question?
answer. You're jumping around.
I'm getting there. Hold on. So yes, at one point in time, they did have iron covers. And that point in time was immediately before I stuck them in my travel bag and brought them to the airport. So that, to me, like, travel only is the one time it is acceptable because, man, airlines are...
I'll take that, Tony. I'll take that.
So you're not a jabroni if you're on an airplane.
He's a travel chode, not a golf chode, okay?
That's right. Well, and here's the thing. So,
Apparently.
and this is what it is, a perfectly acceptable thing to put iron covers on your irons to protect them from the airlines. There is no time at which there is no travel equivalent of a cheap ass golf ball.
So there's no excuse to play a premium ionomer golf ball, but there are selected instances.
Those words don't even go together.
Chris, do you have, along with your iron covers,
Yes.
a ball retriever?
Yeah, tonight gotcha.
Do you go fishing for golf balls? Because, there's They do
I
save
and I
lives
give 'em-
too.
Yeah, no,
I
ball
do, and
the argument for the ball retriever is the life-saving properties.
It is.
Right,
It is.
It may be.
Nobody
yeah.
saved a life with an iron cover.
That is one of the best things about the ball retriever. But now head covers is something different.
Yeah, so let me tell you something, Harry. I still have 7 daughters, and they're still really expensive. And so they like to play golf. A couple of them will go out. They're not great. So yeah, I'm fishing for golf balls that they can use because they're going to last maybe 1, 2, 3 shots. And so if I happen to see a couple that look good, yeah, swoop them up.
Well, here's the thing. It is a trend in the industry. So we are going to be testing iron head covers. And yes.
Thank you.
Somebody go find a shark for me to jump.
We have to test them just purely because the industry is trending that way. So we will test it for those
Is it?
like guys like Chris.
Is it?
Yeah, we have to.
Tony, I've got a better one for you. Playing with someone who uses iron head covers or plays bad music on the golf course.
Ooh, now that's a good question.
Oh, yeah. I think I have an equal ability to tune out either. So music on the golf course doesn't bother me. Like I said, I'm not get off your lawn guy. Even shitty music to an extent. I mean, I probably have limits. You'd have to give me a specific example.
I don't
Taylor
know. The
Swift.
longer we talk about music on the golf course, the more angry that you get about it.
Yeah, I mean,
That is true.
The worst thing is, Chris, if you have iron head covers and you're walking and then you lose a head cover, how annoying is that for you?
Not at all, because it's just one head cover.
Do you call up the company and go, hey,
Yeah, do they sell them in sets or do you buy them individually?
Ask Tony. He bought a set for his Mioras.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, how much do they cost, Tony?
that was a long
For
time
travel
ago.
purposes.
For travel
Totally.
purposes. Hell yeah.
To answer your question, Harry, if I got 14 clubs in a bag and one of them loses a head cover, it's got nothing but soft stuff to clank against, so I'm not going to hear it.
What about 2?
Okay, now they have to be 2, and they have to
Yeah,
be right next to
that's
each
all in the
other.
arrangement.
Yeah, so then I just move them further apart from each other.
Well,
No problem.
now you've rearranged the whole look of your bag. Now it looks weird.
You know what looks weird is having covers on all of your irons.
Before we go, I'm going to play this song for you guys.
Got more bounce in California than all your combined. We got more bounce in
No one? Still?
Nope.
Nothing.
On that note, I have no jokes to leave you with today. I'm just going to say, we out.
Thank God.
Bye, everybody. Right, as soon as this popped up, I'm like, all right, who are possible buyers?
Yeah, the list can't be that long.
So I'll run down the list, and this is, again, talking from guys who are in the industry, around the industry, whatever you want to call it, and then just kind of putting some thoughts together on my own. So we'll start with...